we are actually back in England. There's just a bit that comes down to here, and so most of Redbrook is in England, but once we leave the village we're back in Wales again. A very strange anomaly. Off to our left is the railway bridge that brought the railway across into Redbrook, and it now follows this side of the bank of the river. Of course, all these villages with all this industry had large numbers of pubs. I've no idea why. Sadly, of course, at this day and age, most of them have gone back into some other use. Some of them are private houses. But the one we just crossed on the right-hand side was a lot of pub. The other thing that's unusual, you can see the canoeists going down on the left-hand side. The Wye is navigable from its source to its mouth. Obviously, up off Plymouth, you would manage to get a boat on it, but the rest of the river you can navigate, which is why you find so many canoeists. I mean, there's a very strict limit. If you actually used a motor on it, you can't go more than 4 miles an hour. Well, you don't do much more than that if you're in a kayak coming the way. So most of the kayakers and canoeists start upstream and come downstream. It's actually quite unusual to see them coming beyond Monmouth, because although you can navigate the river, there aren't that many places to get out. Whoa! That was a buzzard.
Yeah.
So we will see, as you know, further on up the river, we're likely to see quite a lot more canoeists. I mean, because everybody's staying in the UK, it's become very, very popular this year. We're now approaching the outskirts of Monmouth, and the fields to our left are the site of the Monmouthshire show. We haven't had it for the last 2 years, sadly, but it's the largest one-day agricultural show in Britain. So basically the Forest of Dean is behind us. It's a little used road by tourists, this one, but I think the views over to the right are great. Unfortunately, the hedge on the left stops us seeing the others. And you can see, look, this tree we're going under now. The odd branch has lost its leaves. This just going down through here and how deep it is just shows how the Ridgeway wore away, you know, during the centuries with carts and so on and so forth. Good indication of how old a road is if you come through a deep bit like that. But going back to the ash trees, they're suffering all over the country. It'll be rather like when we lost the elm trees in the 70s, and it changed the countryside, didn't it? You know, it was very sad, and there's nothing that can be done about it, unfortunately. That isn't a dead ash tree, that's a dead oak tree, but a dead oak tree like that is huge value to insects and bugs and birds. It's nice to see the bunting out in villages now, meaning that things are going on again, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's a lot of elm in the hedge on the left hand side. As long as the elm stays less than 6 inches in diameter, the bugs don't attack it, and so the old hedges have still got a lot of elm in them, because obviously they're trimmed every year to keep them tall. I should say, with that sort of useless information, it's partially because I worked for the Forestry Commission for 25 years. They're commissioned woodlands either side as we go down here as well. Because the Crown would have owned, you know, most of the, either the Crown or the Church would have owned most of the woodlands in this area. The Commission is left with sort of patches, you know, with a sort of a few hundred acres all over the place. Although you've got the main body of the Forest of Dean, I think you came the Ridgeway to St Breville's yesterday, didn't you? And there were woodlands either side there that either were part of the chase belonging to the Crown, or they belong to the Church. Outskirts of Lidbrook. Now you did part of the upper part of Lidbrook yesterday with Bob. We're going to drive through the bit that's right down by the Wye. So we're coming back down towards the river now. On the left hand side in a few minutes there's an old industrial estate where again they used to make paper because of the purity of the water around here. As I said earlier, there's a lot of paper making. There was also a wire works here, but Stowfield now, believe it or not, they make sort of the time controllers for aircraft. In Stowfield, there's a number of little factories down in there, and we went to my husband and I belong to the Ross Science Group, and we were absolutely astounded by the sort of work they were doing, hidden away in Gloucestershire. The Chin family produce, sometimes that field is full of onions. It just depends. Obviously they've got a rotation of crops. They are the growers of asparagus in this area. There are other shops, but if you actually buy asparagus in Marks and Spencer's, it's quite likely to come from the Chin family in this area. They grow blueberries, strawberries, you name it. The Chins, and they've also got a vineyard, and their sparkling wine is about £30 a bottle.
Okay.
So it would need to be a special occasion, wouldn't it? Yeah, you can see the cottage on the right hand side has just changed hands. They're all getting rid of the old garden and putting in the new. So the woodlands on the left hand side, it's actually the right hand bank of the river, left looking out of the coach windows, all belongs to the Vaughan family.
Oh, Goodrich Castle.
Yes.
That's the one I got a portal card, but I hadn't sort of been anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Just needed to get some cards for a few people.
Yes, Goodrich Castle, as we go over the bridge, look to your right, up on the, well, it's about 1-2 o'clock, there it is.
Oh, there it is, up there,
Yes.
yeah.
And it was considered to be, you know, just the right, when they came down the river in the 1800s, the picturesque movement thought Goodrich Castle was perfect. Begun in the early 1100s by Thane Godric, which is why it's called Goodrich Castle. And then obviously the Priory building on the right hand side is here's more kayakers coming, they've obviously got down, and the next lot will start at 2. The Priory is now a very popular wedding venue. Now the field on the right hand side had oilseed rape in it this year, and it was completely battered down by rain. Whether they ever got a crop off of it, I don't know. We're going under the bridge of the road that goes out to the Cornfield Estate. Remember we looked at that earlier. Up to our our left, the area is called Coppet Hill, and there's a little scattered community up there, and they all now have shared ownership of the hill. It was given to them in the 1970s, so if you buy a house up there, you get shared ownership of the hillside. Now there's a turn left, but whatever you do, don't take it, Doug. Whatever you do, don't take it. It took them 3 weeks to get a lorry out. It says, you know, that you mustn't turn that way with anything larger than a minibus, but somebody ignored it. Possibly a foreign driver that had got a car sat nav, and yeah, they had to cut it up to get it out.
Yeah.
Now I know we haven't had much rain, but this little bit of road is permanently flooded. There's a spring that leaks onto here all the time.
Shoved that down with still, didn't we? Over there.
Yeah, well, that was the first pipe.
Now if you watch Grand Designs, one of the earliest programs they did, the house that's going to come up on our left hand side in a few seconds, was one of the first ones that was featured in that. And despite all the flooding we had last year, it's just up out of the flood zone. It's amazing. You want to think when you, well, I'm sure they'll tell you on the boat this afternoon how high the floods were. They were as high as they were in 1947. So it was absolutely incredible. So the house on our left now was the Grand Designs years ago. We've come across a few unusual traffic lights today, haven't we?
Well, this green one.
Yes, it is because we all on the internet, yes.
It's right outside our hotel.
Yeah. Ah, putting broadband in Colford.
Yeah, the road's
Yeah.
closed.
Yeah.
Up to the main road.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, they saw us coming. Oh, that's cheeky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very cheeky.
Very good.
He was tempted.
No, another one. No, another one.
Oh,
No.
no, he's going in there.
He wants a bridge.
This is, again, it was on national television when it flooded here in February last year, and they had to get everybody out of the nursing home by boat. It was on national television. Gosh,
Oh, look at that.
wow.
That's a posh stuff.
We're going to turn right round the roundabout, please. And in fact, again, there's a house for sale down the way. So I know about the houses for sale because our son's moving, and so you know we've had to look at everything that was available. And I said, "Oh, look at that one!" And it's beautifully done up downstairs. And he said, "Yes, Mum, but that's because it flooded last year, and they've had to completely redo the downstairs." There was nothing about that in the sales blurb. And left again, please. Now this is the old A40 before they built the dual carriageway. And there's the river. It's just down there with where Prince Charles used to fish for salmon. But there's been a big with this change in the river. There used to be a water crow's foot everywhere in the river, and because of the change in the amount of phosphate in the river, all that weed has now disappeared. We're going to turn off left here. We're just crossing the Monmouth now. In the 1700s, the Duke of Beaufort was the main landowner around here, and he built Troy House. And again, I'm being very naughty, very naughty in describing it to you because you can't see it. But he built Troy House here whilst and lived in it whilst they were building Badminton House. Near where the badminton horse trials and all that sort of thing in the Cotswolds. But the town benefited because obviously the skills that were brought here when they were building Troy House meant that there are some lovely Georgian buildings in Monmouth, built, by the same workmen. So Troy House is down the little lane to our left where the van is at the moment. It's been a number of things, a family home. It's been run by nuns, and it's now derelict, sadly. Well, derelict. Awaiting restoration, perhaps, is a kind of way. We're crossing the Trothy River, a tributary of the Wye, and we're going to turn left at the toll house. Following yet another ridgeway, a very old road that connected Monmouth right through to places like Tenby in West Wales. And I don't know if you've ever looked at what's he called? Ogilvy's maps that were long, thin maps made in the early 18th century, and this route shows on one of those very early maps. But St Nicholas's Church is quite some size for what appears to be a small village.
Yeah.
Oh, sharp bend there.
Yeah, there's likely to be traffic lights around here for the same reason. Yeah. Yes, it's not the contractors, it's Openreach doing it themselves. The old school is on the left hand side, there's now a new one. And a 13th century pub, the Lion. And there used to be a gentleman that cut the churchyard every week, bless him. So now we're going to bear round to the right at the end of the village, but the old tithe barn and manor house have been found in a field further, just straight on. We need to go round to the right. We're heading into the village of Devorden. Obviously, it's mentioned in the Domesday Book. It's been here for a long time, and John Wesley preached here in 1739. The first time he actually been into Wales and preached. So you'll see in the village that they've commemorated it just recently with a plaque, with an information board, and see there's a plaque on the far left. They reckon there were about 400 people here, which would have been a huge number in 1739. This is the village of Itten. The old school on the left is now a private house. And the children from here would go into Chepstow to school. Yes, please.
to.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay, it's racing this afternoon.
Yeah,
Right, we'll just ride round Chepstow. We won't stop because we might find we get a little bit of a hold up coming back. In the past we probably would have gone left here, but we've got to go further down because of COVID and the small nature of the medieval arch. We can't get into the centre of the town. The Welsh Assembly Government have provided funding to pedestrianise, albeit temporarily, parts. You saw the changes in Monmouth, and there's very little parking, and here they've actually pedestrianised, so we can turn left here, and we'll just go down around past the castle. So when we get up to the T junction, we're going to bear right, well, slightly 1 o'clock, but if you look left, you'll see how they've changed and pedestrianised the centre of Chepstow. But it's very welcoming, and all this was created for the millennium, reflecting the history of the shipbuilding here. So obviously for many years this was the one and only main street, the old jail on the left, and then a lovely row of Georgian houses, most of them still with their original windows on the left hand side. It's unusual, isn't it, to see a row like that? Lots of pubs because of the former connection. So you can park in there tomorrow and have a look at the castle, begun in 1067, immediately after the invasion. The museum is on the right, a really good museum. We've got to bear around to the right because we can't go across the bridge because we're too heavy. And that's the old Rennie's Bridge that's now got a weight limit on it. Again, all this part of the town floods at times. Chepstow has got one of the biggest turns in tide. It's 40 odd feet between low and high tide with the spring tides. And the walk round Wales, just coastal Wales, just starts there on the left hand side. 800 miles if you fancy it. Those new flats are where Fairfield maybe used to be, and where all the old workings for building bridges and ships were.
Didn't recognise anything from where I came in.
The Chepstow bypass, you could just see through there that we were on as we turned at the lights. And the railway crosses the railway does cross the bridge there from Cardiff to Lydney and then on to Gloucester. We're going round the edge. It's a tight fit, I'm afraid, of the old Priory Church, again started to be built in 1067 with, as we go round the next left bend, the most glorious Norman arches. It's worth if you nip through the town tomorrow to come and have a look at the Priory Church. We turn left here, please, Doug. You see the Priory Church and those arches, and we're going to turn right at these traffic lights. I'm afraid we have to retrace our steps or our wheels. And then the A48 goes left and onto Gloucester. So that gives you just an inkling of perhaps what you'd like to see. You can go and explore tomorrow. But we're going straight up now. The coach parking is at the castle. So I'm afraid you do have to walk up into the town unless Doug can just drop you off there, but you know where to find him. If he manages to drop you off a bit higher up, you know where to find him down at the bottom past all those Georgian buildings. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, we've been driving around this area quite close to Tintern, but we haven't actually seen the Abbey anyway yet until hopefully in a few minutes.
On the left, isn't it? I think it's upwards of photograph.
As I sort of mentioned when we left Tintern earlier, the Abbey, they started to build it, the Cistercian monks started to build it in 1131, and then there was a big alteration
Many of them to
in
get out.
the early 13th century.
Yeah.
But of course the only way in to bring the stone and everything else was then by river. Up on the right hand side, right up in the trees, offers Dyke the fortification built by King Offa. There's also the Devil's Pulpit, the two pinnacles of limestone rock that you can stand on and look down at Tintern Abbey. And also running along the other side of the river now is the Wye Valley Greenway, which uses the old Wye Valley Railway, and you come through a tunnel, a railway tunnel that is I think 100,000 yards long. It lights up as you go through, and it's all ability path for cyclists, walkers, etc. But it's only been open since May this year. I mean, the idea was that if they could, they could a cycleway all the way up the Wye Valley using the old railway. It's possible. There's the Peregrine Way that goes from Monmouth up to Simmerjap, where you'll be this afternoon, and they've done this bottom bit. But most of the sections in between are now privately owned, so that isn't necessarily going to be feasible. Right, the first sightings of Tintern Abbey come up on the right hand side now.
Right. Oh.
If you can see through the trees there.
See it in a minute.
Yeah.
And we'll
Right.
turn right where that open reach or whatever it is vehicle is. In the times of the Grand Tour down the Wye, it was all covered in ivy and all that sort of thing, and there were beggars living within it. But now it's in the care of Cadw, and in fact I must take a new photograph because the last one I took there was some scaffolding on it. But it is a glorious building. You can see in some of those rose windows where they've done some restoration, can't you, in the upper windows?
Can't see really through all the reflections. Hopefully we'll get a better view.
The lights. It's incredible, isn't it? It's a bit tight, isn't it? See, they said he was good, didn't they? Right. Just
No reflections. Unless we can get out. Let's see.
it will literally be 10 minutes here, or I should be in trouble with Shelley. There's one of those old mill, for grinding.
Use a stuff there, can't we?
Cider mill, and you can see the tides out.
It's against the
Coach
light
markings
anyway.
over the far side.
Filming into
And
the
there's
sun.
nothing in it. That's incredible.
I wonder if
And
it's
toilets are just
worse.
going in there. Right,
Where do you reckon they were?
just there. Corner there. That way filling
Oh,
up.
right. Gosh, no coaches here.
Right. We can go up that little path to the left of the toilets there. If those of you that like to get out and take some photos. But obviously there's no time to go inside, and we will
Won't be able to get out
have to
until
be
she's
back
out.
here
Won't be able to get past her yet.
No, I know.
by about 23, 24 minutes past
Okay.
1. Okay?
Are open both doors, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, not a very good viewpoint for the sun, is it? But never
No, you're
mind.
looking into the light, aren't you? It's
Yeah.
not ideal.
Right, back to the coach now.
Didn't you all take a lovely picture then?
Well, I hope you all enjoyed just that glimpse of Tintern. We've now got a hugely long journey back to Abbey Mill.
About 2 minutes, is it? 3 minutes?
Perfect timing though. We've got 5 minutes to get there.
I'll reverse through that gate.
Yes. Not the easiest place to get in and out of, is it?
Well, our driver's so experienced, so...
It's not me. It's everybody else.
See?
They probably all parked in the wrong spot.
Yes.
That was a bad thing. They can take it coming in then.
Oh, is this it just here? I think it is. Oh, I don't see the side of it when we were here.
Yes. Yes, they are a bit. Right, here we are. Back at Abbey Mill. I hope you've enjoyed your figure of 8 around the Wye Valley today and up on the ridgeways. It's actually a joy to be back doing the tours. I've done a number of Zoom talks and so on, but it really is great to have to be back talking to real people and hearing you laugh and sigh and go, oh dear, she is going on a bit. But yeah, I mean we've done these tours for Blake's for a number of years, so I suppose we're not doing too bad a job, or they wouldn't have us back, would they?
Thank you.
But thank you.
I was saying, Mike, if you want a photograph of me, Scotland Yard's got plenty.